morning, South Brunswick. Today is Tuesday, September 11th.
I was in the third floor faculty area, getting ready to go to first block.
I was teaching first block Spanish.
What's the material substance that envelops two?
I was in my home base. We had home base at the time, homeroom.
I was in the third floor faculty room. It was my prep period.
It was like watching a horror movie. But obviously it was very, very real.
I wanted to cry. I wanted to run. I wanted to hug all of them and say it's going to be okay. And I couldn't do any of those things. I was kind of like just frozen in time. You could see it as you walked down the hall. There was shock, there was disbelief. There were kids just crying openly. Just standing there with their mouths open. Did you hear? Did you hear?
It wasn't an accident. You just couldn't imagine it to be an accident.
There was some panic.
And I really wasn't sure what I was supposed to be doing.
Get this kid out of class, and this kid out of class, this kid.
She explained to me that her father worked in that building and she needed to call her mother.
Kids were very powerless to try to connect with family members.
This crisis was beyond the magnitude of anything that we had even been trained for.
It's very interesting from a human perspective time, but it has to be the worst day of my life.
One of the teachers came in and said a plane had hit one of the towers, and so we turned on the TV, and then I went to class and turned on the television there.
A plane just hit the World Trade Center. We're not sure what's going on. Why don't you come over and check it out? And I went over to the library, and they were looking at the TVs there in the office area of the library. And at first we thought, like, it seemed like it was just a small plane, like nobody was making a big deal about it, like nobody was clear.
They showed the Twin Towers live, and we saw the second plane go into the second building. And at that point it was almost surreal. It was like everything else stopped and I was moving in very slow time. And the kids would look at the screen, and then they would turn back and they'd look at me, and they'd look at the screen again, and I kept saying, say something, do something, you're the teacher, you have to be in control. Because of course by that point I realized it wasn't failure, it was intentional, and we were under some kind of an attack. And I really wasn't sure what I was supposed to be doing.
There was some panic because the students had a lot of parents who work in New York, and that obviously was a real big issue, the whole concept of my parents, are they all right? People running down here to try to use phones, and in a lot of cases busy lines. We don't get good cell reception here in the building anyway. So kids really in a lot of cases were very powerless to try to connect with family members.
We have a team here that whenever there is anything, a major event, whether it's a suicide or whether it's a accident or whether it's something like this, we kind of gather together to try to figure out what the plan's going to be to address this. So we came up with a letter, not a letter, but an announcement to staff.
Either an announcement or someone coming around with a note saying something like, keep the kids working.
Personally, I didn't discuss it with the students. Students obviously brought it up in the subsequent classes during the other blocks, but I tried not to bring it up because I didn't know enough about what was going on, so it wasn't my place to try to discuss it or give any information that I really didn't know myself.
Student reaction was different because I was actually showing it to them while it was happening. Their reaction was stunned. We had gotten an announcement to shut off the televisions in class. Again, I chose to disregard that because, I was teaching a history class, I was teaching juniors. I thought they were mature enough, and this was history, and this was an opportunity. It was a teachable moment, sad as it is.
I turned the TV around, I put the volume down, I watched, and I kept the kids informed to the best I could without getting them upset. And I didn't want them to see, and they didn't show it, but I didn't know they weren't going to show it. If there were bodies and whatever, I didn't want them to see that, but it was just like there was no way I wasn't putting the TV on.
The school tried to keep it, not under wraps. I don't want to say they were trying to hide it from the kids, but just the way the news is, so many stories are going out so fast that nobody had the real story. And I guess being that I was the video teacher at the time and had control of our TV station here, the principal came and asked me not, don't put anything out, and he kind of explained to me what was going on or what he heard early and how kind of the school was going to handle the day.
I kind of disagreed with that because people were really edgy and nervous not to know what was going on. I mean, I could see the point that they didn't want the whole school sitting there watching it all day long either.
We wanted to know what was going on. Everybody wanted to know what was going on. So to tell us to turn off the TV and continue teaching was sort of like, to me, almost a big joke. I mean, how could you continue teaching that day when this was going on in the news?
All the phone circuits were busy. Regular landlines and cell phones are all jammed up in this area. And then a lot of businesses and schools were closing all over the place. I really kind of felt like, why are we still here in school? I really felt that would have been a legitimate day to close.
We tried to finish the day as normal as possible with not a lot of chaos going on, but parents coming to pick their kids up. We had set up stations for that.
We had parents showing up at the front door of the school that want to take their kids home. And all I remember doing was going from class, getting on a walkie-talkie to go get this kid out of class and this kid out of class, this kid out. That created a situation where the school realized we knew we had to set up some kind of system to make sure the parents could get to their children easily and safely.
It was kind of somewhat of a controlled, chaotic situation.
You can train for things like a bomb scare, you can train for a fire drill, you can train for a gas leak evaluation, a lockdown, but how do you train for the knowledge that your country has been attacked and there are possibly hundreds of kids sitting in front of you who are going to be immediately affected by this? The first thing that comes to your mind is keep everybody safe. There was no need for us to evacuate, so we were able to turn all of our attention onto things that would make the people who were here feel safe, feel secure, and answer any questions.
We had a principal who was brand new. I think he had 3 weeks on the job. He didn't even know that we had a crisis response team. Several of us, 3 of us that were here, kind of went to his office and said, look, we have a crisis response team. Kind of let us help you with this. This is what we usually do when there's a crisis. But of course, this crisis was beyond the magnitude of anything that we had even been trained for. I was one of the staff members that was trying to sort of help him draft what he would write, to help him sort of plan what he would write and how much should we say, how much shouldn't we say, because that was our role as crisis response team people. That's what we've done in the past. But he, not really even knowing who we were, was kind of, I'll do this, I'll kind of do this on my own. So he had written up an announcement and went down to VTN and filmed that, and they played that on the air.
Good morning, South Brunswick. Today is Wednesday, September 12th.
Joining us this morning is our principal, Mr. Ingargiola. Mr. Ingargiola.
Good morning. In light of recent events in our nation's history at this time, I would like all members of our school family to please stand and observe a moment of silence.
The word of the day is propensity. This means a favorable tendency towards something, a natural talent or ability. Jane's propensity for writing made her the perfect choice for the editor of the school newspaper.
Emergency forms were distributed the first day.
We didn't know what we were dealing with. what was going on out in the outside world wasn't going to be changed by anything that anyone could do here. There's nothing we could do to help, except for the individual children, and they were being handled.
School was really suspended, sort of, for the day. We still had the bells, but if kids were in the hall crying or talking to each other, nobody bothered them.
It was subdued for quite a while. You know, people were kind of mulling things over about what had happened.
They came back to school. You know, there was some crying going on. There was talking in the hallway, but nobody was really to the point where they were screaming and hollering. We did play our football game that Friday night, which I thought was wrong, but you know, life still has to go on.
More kids said the Pledge of Allegiance louder, but they seemed to be more cohesive.
The kids started a lot of fundraising, and one of the things they did was to make the red, white, and blue ribbons for a couple of dollars each to raise money for the different charities that were being formed for the victims.
Prior to 9/11, you'd have military recruiters, Army, Navy, Marine Corps, Air Force coming in. You might see them 2-3 times a year. The Marines more often than anyone else. But now you see them nearly every day, to the point where we know them by name. They come in and recruit our kids fairly heavily. Some of that's a result of the Patriot Act, which says we have to, you know, unless the parents specifically request a kid to not be on the list, that they are allowed to come into schools and actively recruit our kids.
Well, I think my main motivation is to join my brothers and sisters in combat and protect our country against terrorism that's constantly threatening us.
9/11 has influenced me to join the military because I don't like whatever, you know, the terrorists and stuff are trying to prove to the U.S.
All of my friends are becoming jarheads, and I want to be in a position that I can help them. I'm a conscientious objector to killing people. It stands against my morals and my religion, especially in a war like this. 9/11, I think that it's given us a new enemy and a new target in our war, and it's given us an opportunity to find somebody to show our patriotism against.
You didn't have time to breathe or think that day. You didn't have time to even say more than, oh my God, this is a horrendous tragedy. This was just so immediate, so poignant, and as I looked at my kids in the classroom, I kept thinking, who's not going to be here tomorrow? Who has a father or a mother who worked in those Twin Towers? And I'm happy to say we were able to not only supply everything that these kids needed, but we were able to run a school as well. But I'll never forget the looks on their faces as they looked from the TV to me, and then they looked back to the TV screen. I felt so inadequate with all my training and all my supposed education. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do.
What's the material substance that envelops two? That one perceives as hunger and the other as food. I awaken tangled covers to a sash of snow. You dream in a cartoon garden I could never know. Innocent imitation of how it would be if when the music ended you'd did not retreat. In my imagination, you are cast in gold. Your image a compensation for me to hold.